Yeah, I think we should start
okay.
at this very stage. And first of all, I would wish to thank all our participants for being with us today for this third digital encounter dedicated to AI and IP, with the objective of empowering academics and the IP family in general on the use of IP. Uh, each day, each week that elapses renders the topic more essential. How do our students learn? How do we learn? How do we construct our teaching based on the way on how do we construct our research? Artificial intelligence is with us and shall not disappear. It shall help us further or present various dangers and hinderings. We know about it. This is not the topic of today. The topic of today is really using AI in IP teaching and creating reading guides. We academics need very often to create reading guides, and this is something super important and central for us. Our esteemed speaker, Professor Priya Kohli from Copenhagen Business School, will lecture for this third encounter. She will have as a discussant Professor George Papanikolaou from Arokopio University in Athens, who is also member just as Priya and as George. They are both members of the European IP Teachers Network Committee, and this is an activity that is organized jointly by Fide, the powerful and efficient Spanish foundation for the dissemination of many aspects of education, and EIPTN, the largest European IP teachers network. So I'm super happy to welcome all of you, and I should not steal any more minute or second to Priya, who has today a very dynamic presentation. And Priya and George, the floor is yours.
Hi, Priya. We are very lucky to hear you once again on AI. It's very helpful what you are doing. It's empowering us. But before you start your talk, just to be on the safe side, I would like you to address three things. First of all, can we rely on AI-generated content for academic use? And the second thing is that we know that these systems are trained and maybe there is some bias in the material they are trained, so bias might be generated. So how this is affecting what we are going to discuss today. And the third very important thing, I think you have addressed that also in the previous talks, but maybe there are newcomers. If there are privacy concerns when we are using these AI tools. So Priya, the floor is yours. Can you share the presentation and note?
Thank you, George. I will make sure that I address these questions. And then please feel free to stop me or interrupt while I'm talking if you have some questions as I go along. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to speak on this topic today. We are going to talk about creating reading guides, and this is our third session. As you know, we've been using this entire spring semester on talking about how we can use AI in teaching IP. So like you can see, in February, we talked about creating multiple choice quizzes using AI. Last month, we talked about creating podcasts. And today we'll talk about making reading guides. And our last one would be on making case law summaries using AI in May. So I would just like to start with a disclaimer, like we have also done the last time, that we have to be really careful that AI can make mistakes. So we should be checking anything that we use or generate or post, use anything that we've generated using AI. It also means that we shouldn't be using AI very blindly or blindly at all, because it can generate fake content. I think in one of the webinars, I did mention that 8 advocates in the United States lost their job because they generated briefs that they used in courts of law which contain wrong citations or fictitious citations to cases that didn't exist. So when the court asked them to produce those cases, they couldn't because they were generated by the AI and were fictitious cases. So we have to be careful. And then another thing that I'd like to emphasize is that AI cannot replace our teaching just yet. So in the end, just check whatever you post and whatever you use. So having said that, I think we are quite familiar with these tools. We all know probably Microsoft Copilot. We used Google Notebook LM last time, and we are going to use it again today. And then the third tool we are using today is ChatGPT. So our main objectives today are that we should all be able to understand the benefits of AI in creating reading guides. That also means, and I also hope that we are able to identify components of high quality supported guides. And then I'm also going to use some concrete examples so that we can learn on how to apply these AI tools in practice. I'd like to actually start by identifying our target audience and what are their primary concerns. So our target audience is, of course, our students. And the reason why we would make a reading guide would be so that we can address some of the challenges that our students face. So here I've identified 3 challenges which most of my students confront. So one is that they find that legal language can be very dense and it can be very complex. So if they have a reading guide in front of them, they sort of work out what is it that they should focus on. And then another challenge is that students generally have a little bit of trouble in differentiating between what is essential and what is peripheral in terms of the material. So is it that the case law is important? Are there certain concepts that are important? So a reading guide sort of clarifies that for them. So that's why I think it's a good idea to address these challenges which are faced by our students in a reading guide. And also another challenge that our students normally face is on application of legal theory in practice. And if they have sort of a reading guide on which could be some questions, which could also be some reflection questions or some very basic questions, we'll go through that in just a bit where I'll show you some examples. I think the students will be better prepared to participate in class, and they would be able to also understand how to apply these legal theories that we teach them in practice. So why should one use an AI in designing a reading guide? Well, I think the first point is quite obvious for speed and scalability. It is really helpful in terms of the time we can save because it can generate guiding questions for maybe 10 cases in under a minute. So speed and scalability is definitely a strength. It can save us a lot of time. Then AI also offers alternative framing for essay questions. So for idea generation and also for inspiration. It can come up with ideas which we may not be able to think of at that time. So in that sense, it's quite useful. And it also sort of offers a tailored support for diverse learners. And I will give you a few examples in just a bit on how we can simplify complex terms, and especially for students who don't have English as their first language, but are studying law in English. So it can be very useful for them. And then also it's quite useful if we want to update our reading guides which already exist, because it can add new case law if we use the right AI prompts. And we'll talk about the significance of prompts in this scenario as well. So just to talk about the core structure of AI-supported reading guides. I mean, firstly, it can generate a topic overview. We can also use AI. We can feed in learning outcomes, and then through our customized prompts. So through our customized prompts, we can actually make really, really good and easy to use learning guides for our students, reading guides for our students. I will also show you just in a bit about how to use AI to talk about key concepts. It helps us sometimes auto-identify them. And with the example of Notebook LM, I'm going to show how we can do that. I find it really useful also for ideas on various tasks and activities that can be generated. So a lot of it comes up with suggestions. I have also successfully used critical thinking questions using ChatGPT, and then one can also generate reading lists using AI. So allow me to walk you through some of them.
Priya,
So,
I have one question before you continue.
yeah,
You presented three tools, AI
yeah,
tools, but
yeah.
is one of these tools more suitable for low cases, or I mean, in the context of these reading guides,
Yeah.
do you see that one of these tools is performing better than the other, or it depends on what we want to create? Because I see here in your slide, you say critical thinking, and you have under parentheses GPT generated,
Yeah.
or yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I will address that with the help of this example, actually.
okay.
And my short answer is yes. There are certain tools that are better suited for creating a basic guide. And then if you want a more nuanced guide, there is another tool which is slightly better. So the first one that I'm using or showing you now is Notebook LM. So if someone has never used AI to generate a reading guide, this is perhaps a good starting point. So for basic creation of basic guides. So of course, the first step is selecting our tool. And let's say we have, in this first example, we select Notebook LM, which is a tool that is compatible with Google. It's Google's tool. Our second step would be that we would upload the text that we would like to make a reading guide on. So here so this is the kind of page that you will see when you open Notebook LM. It will ask you to add a source. So here you can upload a PDF file, you could upload a text file, you could also actually upload audio files. So for the sake of our example today, I uploaded the new design regulation. And then, as you can see, last time when we were talking about podcasts, it was this button that we clicked, which generates a podcast. But today we are talking about reading guides. So I clicked on this button, which says study guide. And here you can see it's written EU Design Protection System Regulation 2024/2822. So here, Notebook LM has generated a reading guide. And what it has come up with is a couple of things. So the first thing that you can see here is key concepts. So it is suggesting certain key concepts. It is talking about, you can see community design system, you can it talks about novelty. What is novelty? What do we understand by individual character? So you could essentially choose or use this particular slide or in many different ways. You could tell this to your students, you could print it in your reading guide that these are the key concepts. Then you might give them a few questions like, what is the difference between novelty and individual character? Or you could ask the students to find cases that talk about these important conditions of novelty and individual character. So these key concepts could be used in various ways depending on the level of the students. So this is what is auto-generated. And then it also auto-generates short answer quizzes. So here you might choose to just give the questions to the students that while they're reading the regulation, they should think about why was a revision of the EU design protection system necessary? Or the second question could be, explain the coexistence of the EU design system and national design protection systems. And then you could also ask them in your reading guide, what constitutes use of a protected design that requires the right holder's authorization? So this can be used in many different ways. If I were to use these in a reading guide, I would actually ask my students also to think about areas where what constitutes use. And then I would ask them what is permissible and what is not permissible. So for instance, in number 5, you can see the question says, describe one limitation on the exclusive rights conferred by a registered EU design. So I would ask my students, when is it that you don't need the permission of the authorized or the design holder, the rights holder? So here I would expect my students to tell me that if it is for private use, for non-commercial purposes, or for experimental purposes, you don't need to seek permission of the right holder. So this is something that the AI tool Notebook LM has generated by itself, but I could choose to use these questions in many, many different ways. Then this tool also comes up with suggestions for essay format questions, as you can see now on this slide. So for example, discuss the rationale behind the recent revisions, analyze the interplay between EU design protection systems and national design laws, evaluate the significance of the limitations, and so on. Critically examine the role and functions, and so on. So you can see here, it offers these suggestions by itself, and all you did was you uploaded the regulation and you clicked on study guide. And it's entirely up to you how you use it, how you refine it. And then it also offers you a glossary of key terms. And I would say this is extremely useful for students who are learning law in English, but English is not their first language. So you might want to help those kind of students along. For instance, here, they might need revision on what is the principle of proportionality? What is the principle of subsidiarity? What do we mean by non-exclusive licenses? So this glossary of key terms could also be quite handy to be, you could include it in your reading guide. Then I'd like to show you another example. Now, the first example I showed you.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's really spectacular to see all this job coming out of the machine, but through your experience, you have performed that several times, I think. So the first output, was it a good quality output? What's your experience? Yeah.
I think the output varies, but I think Notebook LM is a good starting point. So I don't always take everything that it sends, but I select. And I select maximum of 2 readings when I'm making a reading guide. And then I select a maximum of about 5 core questions. So between 2 and 5 core questions in my reading guide. So I would never include the entire thing because I think it's very overwhelming for the students. So for that reason.
Okay, but through your experience, do you see that the responses are of good quality? I mean, there are not very important mistakes, or of course, yes, we have to go through all this material, right?
Yes, you're right, absolutely. So what I generally do, and what was really successful last semester when I was teaching my intellectual property law class, the students were very thrilled to have short answer questions and long answer questions. And I gave them longer answer questions simply so that they have sort of, when they go through a text, they know what to look for. And for that purpose, this served me really well. I had about 15 readings and I used Notebook LM the first time. And I thought, and I refined the questions a little bit, but I would say it did 70% of the job for me, the AI tool.
That's amazing, yes. Okay.
So if we wanted to do something more complex, and if we become comfortable with using the first tool, then I would actually go in for ChatGPT, and I'm going to show you one example of how it can work. So here I'm going to take the example of human rights law, and I will take the example of Article 8 and then later on Article 10. So I would ask the AI to provide a very brief summary. So if you were to ask for a 1-line summary, it would say Article 8 is about protection of the rights to respect for private and family life. And one of the questions it suggested was, how has the European Code of Human Rights balanced rights versus state interests? And then, as we also talked about last time, when using AI, it's all in the prompt. So one of the prompts that I used was summarize the principle of proportionality in European human rights law in 150 words. So here you can see I've been very specific. I've been specific with the number of words I'd like it to sort of contain the idea in, and then I've asked for a summary. I've also specified the principle of proportionality, but in context of the human rights law. And then here, the other option could be you could ask ChatGPT to sort of generate a concise overview that sets the stage for critical reading. So this is another prompt that can be used, but I'll show you what the AI came up with. So my prompt was summarize the principle of proportionality in European human rights law in 150 words. And this is what it came up with. And here you can see that it actually does cover the important aspects that we would like to be covered. So for example, it talks about the test that it typically involves 4 stages. You would like, and these are the 4 stages we would like our students to consider. So we would like them to know that it is important to assess the legitimate aim. Then we would also like them to think about that it is required, that it can only happen if it is necessary. So this concept of what is necessary, the least restrictive means, we would want our students to understand this and think about it when they're reading. Then about the fact of maintaining a fair balance. And then we would also like them to think about margin of appreciation doctrine. What does that mean? So I think this text that the AI has generated can help us sometimes to frame further questions that we might have not thought about before. And then I will move to Bloom's taxonomy, which as teachers, most of us are familiar with. It is the educational framework that sort of classifies the learning objectives by level of complexity and specificity. So I'm just going to share with you the latest revised version from 2001, where it is sort of divided into 6 hierarchical cognitive levels from basic to advanced. So this is something we use as well in class, even when we are not using AI. So if we have a class that is at the beginner's level, we probably ask them questions which are like, can you recall, can you recognize the facts, and, to check some basic concepts. And then slightly advanced version would be, can you describe or summarize, simply because we want to assess whether they have grasped the meaning. Can they tell us, and have they understood the main idea? And then likewise, we keep on advancing to questions which require analysis, which require evaluation, or which require combining all these elements to generate a new piece of work. So I used Bloom taxonomy in context of the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 10. And I asked the AI to generate an example. So this is what it came up with. So if I wanted to pitch a question in my reading guide, which is very basic, then I would ask a question, list the 3 types of expressions protected under Article 10. If I wanted them to, if it is a higher level class, then I would ask them to critique the margin of appreciation doctrine in the light of recent case law. And otherwise, if it's really advanced level, then I would ask them to draft a mock European Court of Human Rights opinion, balancing Article 10 with public order concerns. So this is what the AI came up with. I'd like to share another example with you, which I used. So here the prompt was, write 3 Bloom taxonomy aligned learning outcomes on freedom of expression under Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights. So it comes up with these 3 questions. So explain the scope and legal basis of protection offered by Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, including both the positive and the negative obligations on member states. So here, the idea is to test the knowledge and understanding. In the next question, the idea is to evaluate whether they can analyze, whether they can evaluate. And in the last question, it is sort of a synthesis. where we asked them to compare the interpretative differences between UK domestic codes and the European Court of Human Rights regarding permissible limitations on expression, particularly in protest and media context. So the better our prompt is, the better our reading guide can be.
Priya,
Yeah.
I have not a very intelligent question, but in the previous paradigm, we had a button asking to create, pushing the button, you had a guide on your hands,
Yes.
right? In the previous
Yes.
model. So
Right.
now you have to work with prompts. So it's
Yes.
extremely critical.
Yes.
What exactly are you asking the prompt, right?
Exactly.
So
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
give us some tips how we can have more effective prompts when we're chatting
Absolutely.
with it? Yeah.
Absolutely. So actually, you've queued me up quite nicely with my next slide because I'm going to show you a bad prompt and a good prompt.
Okay.
So a bad prompt would be you just say generate 3 learning outcomes for GDPR session. So in context of our general our data protection regulation. So if you say something like this, generate 3 learning outcomes for GDPR session, it comes up with these 3. Analyze GDPR principles, evaluate enforcement, assess impact on corporations. So this is something extremely general and not really very productive. But if you make it slightly better, your prompt, then it comes up with this. It says, analyze the foundational principles underpinning the general data protection regulation. And then it also explains to the students what is expected. So students should be able to identify and critique key GDPR principles such as lawfulness, fairness, transparency, data minimization, and so on. So you can see the difference between this slide and this slide. So this is absolutely the role of the prompt that has allowed us to come up with this suggestion to be put in our reading guide. So what I would generally do is I would use this kind of a prompt, this kind of a description for my students who are master students and who I expect to engage with the regulation quite deeply. And here, just explaining to them what is expected from them when they read and how they should prepare before they come to class, they will already know that they need to have a handle on what is meant by lawfulness, what is meant by fairness, because these are the kind of concepts we will discuss in class and build further on. And then, for example, if you see question 3, it says critically assess the implications of the GDPR for corporate governance and compliance strategies. So here the students should know that they should explore how GDPR has influenced internal data handling policies, risk mitigation measures, and the role of data protection officers. So here you can already see there are 2 landmark decisions that have been quoted. So it is also a hint to the students that they should come prepared reading Schrems 2 before they come to class. So I would use this in my guide. I would prefer to use this one. If we compare this one, the simpler one, I think this is probably useless. And this is because we were able to generate with a good prompt. But I think that if you've never engaged with AI, then Notebook LM should be a good starting point for you. So moving on, I would also just like to mention that there are some ethical and practical considerations here. So like I also mentioned right in the beginning, we must verify the content. So if somehow the AI gives you certain citations for cases or also refers to certain articles or papers that have been written, I think it is our job and our duty to verify those citations.
Practically, how are you doing that? I mean, you get the site, you ask particularly which is a citation where you got this.
Yeah. So practically I will walk you through the workflow for creation of a guide. But just to answer your question right here, what I would do is if it comes up with a reference then or a citation, then I would go on to Google Scholar and I would type that in to check whether it actually exists.
Okay.
So that's how I would fact check. And the same, I would go on to Westlaw, or I would go on to the other tools that we use to check whether the citations are actually existing.
Could we use something like Cite AI?
You could.
Another tool?
You could use that.
Because that also checks for references.
It does.
In databases.
That's correct. That's correct. You could also use that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for your input. Then I would also suggest here, some teachers tend to put in answers that the students have given, and those answer sheets have the student's name on it. So I would never, ever input a student's personal data because everything that you put on any AI platform, it uses as training data. So you would never want to use or violate GDPR. And then your own home university might have certain rules. It might say that you are not allowed to use ChatGPT, or you are not allowed to use a certain tool. So please also, you need to check on that. Then whenever we talk about AI, we talk about bias. And here it is important that we also talk about this with our own students, but also when we are creating reading guides, we recognize that AI generated content can reflect legal biases or even societal biases. So always check for that. And one point about transparency, I think it's quite good to actually inform your students when you're using AI tools, because later on when you want to get feedback, it's really good that the students knew in advance that you have been using AI tools, and they can give you good feedback so that you can also improve your reading guides for future.
So may I interrupt you? So how are your students reacting? I mean, when you give a reading guide, which is created by AI, how do they
actually,
yes.
Some of them are actually quite happy with it. And they also say sometimes, like in feedback, they will say, because it's not everything that in my reading guide that is from AI, but wherever there are certain items from AI, I would put it in parentheses that, this is generated with the help of that particular AI. And then the students actually say, for example, in one of my classes, the students said that the short questions, they were really helpful. And they use the short questions also later on for exam preparation. So that was good feedback, because then I could put it on Canvas and use it again and again for next group of students as well. Because like majority of them thought that the long reflection questions were good to come prepared for class, but the short questions were good because the students could go back to them for exam preparation. So in that sense, I've used it. That's the kind of feedback I've got so far. I hope I answered your question. So then I think I'll just give you a brief workflow guide. So let's say you want to use AI to design your reading guide. Then I would say that you should start by defining your learning goal for that particular session. So what is the learning objective? Then if you're comfortable with generating your own reading guide and you don't want to use Notebook LM because you think that is way too general, then you can use ChatGPT. But if it's your first time, I would strongly suggest use Notebook LM.
We got the message.
Yes. Good. So if you use ChatGPT, then you can generate questions on the topic, like generate an overview or generate guiding questions or talk about key concepts, whatever you think you want to write about or want your students to focus on. And then you can also cross-check and refine your reading list. So let's say you've asked ChatGPT to generate a reading list. Then it's important to cross-check it with Westlaw or Hines Online. Then I would review the guide for alignment with my criteria, and then I would distribute it. And usually we distribute it digitally. And then moving on, you can also actually use AI for addressing different learner needs. So for instance, like we mentioned, that if you have students who have trouble with English, you could rephrase the dense questions. You could ask AI to simplify them. If there are certain key terms like proportionality or margin of appreciation, you could also ask AI to translate those key terms into plain English. Then you can also ask AI to suggest multimodal tasks, like you want to do some oral debates in your class, or you want to tell your students in their reading guide itself that please prepare this and then we'll have a debate on this topic. So that's also possible.
So you write here, you can create infographics.
Yes.
Yes. So can you tell us more about that? Yeah.
Sure. In infographics, there's an AI called napkin.ai that is really good to create infographics, and it's a free tool that you can use. So what you need to do is you need to input the text, and then the AI tool called Napkin AI, it generates infographics for you.
Okay.
It's very interesting. It doesn't take much time to do that. So it's really efficient if you want to do that.
Amazing. Yeah.
And then I thought maybe I can go over some common pitfalls and offer some solutions for it. I think the first one I've harped on it quite a bit, of not blindly trusting AI content. The second one, I think maybe we should discuss a little bit more, because it is about overloading guides with too much information. I think when I started out using AI, I sort of got quite excited that, oh, this is a possibility. My students can learn so much. And I started putting in way too many questions. So I would put 5 or 10 short questions and about 5 long questions for reflection. And gradually, I think what's working well for me now is if I focus on about 2 to 3 readings with a maximum of 3 to 5 core questions. I think that's palatable also for the students. It's easy to digest. And another common pitfall is vague prompts. Because I seriously believe that if you use structured prompts, the output that you get from the AI will be much better. So for our purposes, if you say generate 3 Bloom level analysis questions for a certain case, then I think you will get a very good result from the AI. Then I would also encourage you, if you're using AI tools to create reading guides, I would encourage you to get feedback from your students. It could be through surveys, but it could also be just a 5-minute in-class discussion where you ask your students what part of the guide helped you the most. And that's where I got my feedback on using short questions. And then, this helps you revise your guide and structure. Maybe the structure has to be revised, or maybe the tone has to be revised based on, your feedback. Then I think I will summarize here so that we have some time for questions and to hear your concerns and maybe your own experiences as well. So just to summarize, I think AI does accelerate and enrich the creation of our reading guides. You've seen a few examples that sort of show the role it has in designing critical thinking questions and also to enhance engagement of our students. And we also need to remember that we always have pedagogical control. So we can always refine it. We can delete certain questions if we think they are not suitable for our students, or we can just get inspired and create our own questions. So this is what I thought I would talk to you about. And I think we have about 15 minutes now for addressing any questions that anybody has, or maybe hear about your own experiences and have a discussion.
Okay, so it's Yosol who wants to make a comment, right?
Yes, thank you. This has been extremely interesting for me, and I wonder if you or anyone else can tell me if this system works also in other languages, because I teach mostly in French, and I would find it very interesting to use this kind of system.
Yes, actually, I use it in my Danish classes as well. So I teach in English, but I also teach in Danish. So you can use Notebook LM, and all you need to say is, if you're using Google in French, for instance, then you could that would be your language. But if you're using Google in English, then you could say, could you translate it into Danish, or please answer in Danish. ChatGPT also writes back to you, like I use Danish all the time because I teach in both languages.
Yes.
So,
but if the material I feed it with is in French, it will work too.
It would work. It will work. Exactly. It would work well.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
So any other question? I have one. So realistically speaking, how much time do you really save when you're using this tool? Because you have also gone through all the material you have created.
Yes, I think it cuts back your time by more than half. By more than half. So for me, I can teach more courses now because I don't have to spend time on coming up with creative ideas for my PowerPoint slides. And I don't have to spend time on thinking about or I can use AI as a sparring partner for thinking about questions that could be interesting for my students to reflect on. And I also use AI as a sparring partner for generating activities to do, for generating questions. So I think it has cut my preparation time by more than half for each course that I teach.
Okay, so now we have a comment in the chat. I don't know if you can see it. So
okay, I'll just...
with teacher using AI to spare them some work and students suddenly taking their turn, would such a loop end up in early retirement for both?
Sorry, I can't. I will just try and see if I can see the chat.
Yeah. Well, it's somehow sarcastic as
okay, could you repeat it, because I couldn't see.
Yes.
I can't
with
see the
teacher
chat.
using AI to spare them some work and students suddenly taking their turn, would such a loop end up in early retirement for both?
Actually, it's a very good question. I think on the contrary, my experience is that the students are super engaged when they get the right questions, when they get engaging questions, because when you start using ChatGPT, you can also ask ChatGPT, how can I make it more relevant? You can put in the age group of the students that you have, and then you can say, can you come up with interesting questions about, let's say, music? We may not, because we all teach, I guess we teach IP law, and then there can be questions about copyrights when we talk about music, for instance. So if you think about, you can ask ChatGPT, what are the top 10 music-related IP infringement cases? And it will come up with those. So you can use that. And the students are super engaged. And as soon as my university allows us, I would actually also go in for training the students to use AI. Because I think it is something like the internet. When internet came, there were people who were troubled. How are we going to manage? It's going to take away this, and it's going to cause our students not to read. I think students get so curious to go dig deeper into certain things. I mean, I'm sure there are going to be a handful of students who will just get laid back and use it to answer for themselves and not reflect on them. But my experiences, they are just maybe a handful. The rest of them are super engaged. And it really does depend on the teacher, I think. And if we are using it wisely, I think we can actually make the students learn much more, make them more inquisitive, and maybe more excited about our disciplines.
Well, I'm sorry to make this comment, but well, I'm afraid to use these tools. You know why? First of all, I'm thinking that if it's a too silly question, right? Maybe I'm spending too much energy for my stupidness. First of all, so I feel a little bit guilty. But the second thing is that I'm super amazed about what you indicated, that you might chat with the machine and get some ideas of new questions, or and this is something that you always have some preformed questions in your mind and things your students you would like to know, But
Yeah.
you are not. It's not easy to be creative because there is a repetition also in
Exactly.
your teaching. Yes.
It is just
So
another tool,
yeah.
and I think
And
you should try it.
you think it's helpful?
I think it's extremely helpful.
Okay. So there's also another question: if your PowerPoints will be made available somehow.
Yes, I have nothing against people getting the PowerPoint, so I'm happy to share.
Okay, so maybe they can contact you with by mail, right? Or
I think I can send them to the organizers and they can circulate
okay,
it, I guess.
okay,
But we
okay,
can work it out. You can also write to me and I can send it to you.
okay.
Indeed, the PowerPoints, the presentation, and the PowerPoint are available in our readings from the Global Digital Encounters in the reading
Yes.
section. So no worries with this for all of you.
Yeah. I think there's another question. Someone called AK.
Yeah, that's me.
Yes.
Sorry, it's
okay.
not really
Okay.
a question. I read, of course, the comment on like early retirement, and
Yes.
I kind of agree with George, I guess, his name, who is not really worried, but does have some concerns about like teachers or students would use AI to have the AI everything done,
Yeah.
and I can understand the concerns as
Yes.
I see a lot of students, or even I saw a post by someone who was asked from his employee, please provide a guide or like a paper, and it was and he admitted I had ChatGPT write it, but I would like to call your kind of usage of AI into something like think with AI. So you AI in this kind of usage is more, okay, I have AI, get this work done, which is fits best for AI.
Yeah.
So like putting together some questions, translations, reframes.
Yeah.
And you spend more time with what the kind of work that matches perfectly with the human brain, the mind. And you have already said it gives you more time to teach, to exchange ideas.
Yeah.
So it's just make it short.
Yeah.
Okay, make it short. There's no, I don't see retirement coming to you the next days. I think it's this is the kind of usage that is perfect for AI and for teachers. So the boring stuff which needs to be done can be done by AI.
Yes.
And it's I think your teaching is way better since there's more exchange.
Absolutely.
So thank you for providing this ideas.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your comment.
So we have, I think, another question from Andre. No?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to ask if we could feed the AI tool with approved content that we already acknowledge that it has been safe, let's say safe. Somehow like I wrote something years back, and that content is already approved by me and proved to be correct and suitable for the understanding of, for students. So could I feed the AI tool with my content
Yeah.
in order for it to generate a reading guide, or does it always get his information from the online sources?
You could upload your content. You can essentially upload any content. But the thing is that if you do not, for ChatGPT and the advanced version, you can go in the settings and say, please don't use the material that I upload for training purposes. And not everybody knows that. So if you want to upload, so in that sense, if you're conversant with that you have, all AI tools would offer you this opportunity, but it is quite complex to find where you have to unclick that box. So most tools by default, they use whatever data you upload for training purposes. So that's the reason you shouldn't upload any unpublished work or the work of your students or any work which would violate GDPR. But having said that, like you said, your work is approved by you, and maybe you're talking about an article which has already been published. So it probably is accessible in various libraries, also digitally. So the AI tool would actually dig it up by itself, but you also have the option of uploading those articles which are already free floating on the internet to save
That's
your own time.
Sorry, that's
So,
not what I meant.
okay.
What I meant was, could I limit the possibility for the AI tool to give me results from sources that are not verified or not for the universities? Let's say there are some articles wrote by a vlogger or something else,
Right.
and they are purposely lacking certain information, or maybe they are inducing wrong information. They are introducing wrong information
Okay.
in the as in purpose.
Right. Yes, you can. So you have to design your prompt to do that. So be very specific in your prompt. And if you do that, you can. And also, if you, for research purposes, you have another AI tool called Answer This, which is used by researchers. So that would give you verifiable academic articles.
Okay, thank you.
So because what you're talking about slightly goes in the direction of research, I believe. But you can also design your prompt in ChatGPT, if that's the tool you're using. The better your prompt, the better your output would be. So you can definitely design it to, sorry.
So you mean you put in your prompt, use specifically this article and blah,
Yes,
blah, blah?
you
So
can.
that's the way
Yeah.
you can do it.
You can, yes, you can. And there are specific AI tools available for specific work. So like I said, maybe if you want, I can write them in the chat. When you were talking about infographics and PowerPoint graphics, so you can use this one. I've just written it in the chat, napkin.ai. And then if you, for research purposes, you could use Answer This. And there are plenty of tools. And also, please be on the lookout of new tools, because new tools are constantly coming at the moment.
Priya,
So,
thank you very
yes.
much for all this and the empowerment it gives to the network, your approach to AI, and also the creativity in using AI. Definitely a tool. It's not going to substitute human cognition, right?
It won't.
It can, yeah. So at this point, I think we are close to the end. I don't know if Lorenzo want to make final remarks or comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Priya, and thank you very much, George, for this session. I am super happy that so many colleagues intervene and were present today. We have the last one of the series of 4 in May. I really urge you to join also our May session that Priya will conduct and that will be moderated by Yolanda Bechel Sanz de Baranda. This is really, I think that this is a contribution that is very useful for all of us now and later on, in the very sense that, my dear colleagues, we are not forced. It's very good. It's better to follow live the sessions because you can intervene and also interact with Priya. But should you need it so, you can, of course, connect online and then review in a few days. Fide will upload the presentation and the slides so that you can review it at your own pace, at the time you have it, when you have time to do it more at ease. And this is really why it's so important. Perhaps, Priya, I know you want to add a word as well on this before I formally close. On the way people can use it afterwards, basically.
Sure. I just wanted to mention that I've put in some tools that you can also use in the chat, the AI tools. So ChatGPT, of course, is one that's very common, but there are new tools that are coming up constantly. But for our purposes, I think as teachers, napkin.ai is also really good because it's free. And it's very quick. So if you want infographics to make your slides better, more interesting and engaging for the students, you could use that. So it's a very exciting time, I think. Thank you very much.
Yes, and this is why it's super important that we be together on the 19th of May for the last of these 4 sessions on the 19th of May at 4 p.m. Each session can be reviewed independently. There is no single doubt, and can be studied independently by all of you, as Priya just mentioned. But the whole compendium will remain available on the Global Digital Encounters website, so that you can review it at your own pace. And of course, Priya and the entire EIPTN team is next to you, to all of you, to support you in this new adventure, not so new for Priya, but new for some colleagues. So an adventure which is constantly evolving, because technology is evolving fast, and therefore we want to work as a network. All my thanks to the participants who came today on behalf of EIPTN and of Fide, and of course all my warm thanks to Priya and George for this session. So enjoy the rest of the afternoon if you are in Europe, or the day if you are in another continent, and we keep in touch, publishing rapidly the slides and the presentation.